What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 117 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. It is a momentous occasion on this here FlipScreen Games Podcast this week because after I want to say about a year. I don't even know how long it's been. We're doing a What We're Playing episode, gang. What's going on?
Yeah, I can't quite believe how long it's been since we just had a week with nothing crazy, no drama, no news, no one being bought, no one doing things they shouldn't be, and we can just talk about video games.
It speaks to what just absolute like banger set of years it's been for video game enthusiasts, right? Not just in terms of releases, but just goings on in the industry. It's been a very eventful couple years. And it's we finally and now on this November 20th, 2023, the year of our Lord, we finally got a chance to breathe and talk about some of the indie games we're playing this week because you and I both have a brand new indie game that we are excited to talk about. I have a little game called Backpack Hero, which we talked about last week during the Nintendo Indie World presentation. And then you got a chance to play American Arcadia, which you and I both played during the Steam Next Fest a couple months ago.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm really excited to talk about more American Arcadia. I know we both enjoyed the demo, but thanks to the publisher for sending over the code for Backpack here. I really want to know how you are getting on with that game because we spoke about it a little bit last week. It was one of the standouts in the show. That, and I think there were like two, maybe three others that we both were really excited about. But Backpack Hero was just that strange game that was like organization, inventory organizer, the game, and
It's
I kind of
like
want to know what it's all about.
Yeah, it's like well, and let me say first of all, thank you to Jaspel, the developer, as well as different Tales and Indie Arc, the publishers, for giving us the code and letting me check the game out. I like I said during our Indie World episode, I was like very immediately taken by not just the style and but the premise of the game, and was excited to get my hands on it. And it actually exceeded my already pretty high expectations for it. Like, I jumped into it on, I wanna say, Saturday night. I had worked, a pretty long shift that day, and I came home and was, like, tired. I had, Super Mario RPG burning a hole in my pocket. I hadn't booted it up yet, but I knew it being, like, a classic, JRPG that it was gonna be a lot of reading, so I was like, "Oh, you know what? This is perfect. Let me jump into Backpack Hero and, like, just get my feet wet and see what it's all about, you know?" And I played it for 4 hours and was up until, like, 2 or 3 in the morning playing it
Oh
and was just
wow.
like, "Oh, shoot." Like, I blinked and time was gone. It's really fun. It's a really fun game, and if you didn't get to check it out, in the indie world coverage, kind of the elevator pitch for it, as I would describe it, is it is it's kinda like the inventory management of, Resident Evil 2, right? Where you have a backpack and what you can carry around is limited by, the space in your bag, and there is, a a bunch of different types of items. Like there's like weapons and armor and like healing items and some like just kind of like incidental things. And a lot of them have unique interactions based on where they're placed in your bag and stuff like that. So like for example, there's a weapon that I was using in my last run where it was a weapon that got a buff based on having certain other types of weapons of the same type that are adjacent to it. And then there's like another one that is like I had this piece of armor that I've rolled multiple times where any piece of armor or any weapon that you put next to it gets a +1 on its modifier. So you can get like all these cool combinations where you might have this weapon that's like, okay, it deals 7 base damage or something like that, right? But then I put that armor on and I put it next to that. I put another modifier on top of it. I put another thing diagonal to it that powers up adjacent weapons. And then all of a sudden it's hitting for like 12 every time I use it or something like that, you know? And then that also applies to the way that like armor builds up because each turn you have like health, right? That like dictates your overall health that you have for the run because it is a roguelite. But then you also have armor that you can generate either by like using a shield, but then there's also like kind of armor modifiers as well. So like maybe I have that piece of armor in the center, right? And then I put a helmet on at the top of my pack. And the helmet has a modifier where for every row below it, you get +1 defense. But because it's connected to that piece of armor, it gets an additional +1, right? So just like that kind of.
Quite a lot more strategy than I, anticipated then. Looking at the footage, it was like, oh, you need to piece it in and figure out, like, the position in the backpack, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together that they were all gonna be so interconnected, and there was gonna be a lot of strategy and moving things around kind of
Yes.
mid-battle, I presume you're having to do that?
So it depends. That does happen mid battle where like sometimes you'll get a thing where like an item will appear on the side of your bag and it'll be like if you reorganize this turn, you'll get this item. And there's a strategy like risk reward to that because you have action points every turn. Like if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll see above the character, there's this little like green circle, right? And like you have like 3 actions by default every turn. And some items like will take 0 action points. Some will take 1, some will scale. So it'll be like you can use this weapon as many times as you want, but every time you use it, it'll take 1 extra action point. So the first time you use it, it's 0. The next time you use it, it's 1. The next time you use it, it's 2. Things like that. So if you do rearrange your bag mid battle, that takes all of your action points. So like that can sometimes work to your advantage if you have like a piece of food that will give you your action points back, or you're going to get a free item that you need, or something like that. Um, but generally speaking, the way I try to play is I try to organize my bag after every run because you get new items after every fight. So like you have a lot of
Okay.
opportunities outside of battle to organize your bag. So you kind of want to ideally always be managing like what's in your pack. And it's like, am I actively using this run? Is this a thing I'm trying to take back to my base? Like otherwise, should I be getting rid of it and making space for other things that are going to play into my play style? So again, that
And the bag changes as you go? Like, I remember in the
you
footage,
level
it
up.
grew? Yeah.
So
Oh,
every
okay.
every time you level up, you get I think it's either 3 or 4 squares that you add, and you can add them anywhere in the bag. So like you could like
So
some
it's not just a
weapons.
straight column or a straight row, I could have,
No.
like, 2 at the
You
top
could do
left
like you
and
could do
1 on
2
the right.
here, or you could do 1, 1, 1, 1 in all the like whatever you want. And like some items, they have interactions with like the length and spacing of the bag and stuff like that. Like there's like a bow and arrow is one of the weapons, and you need to have the bow in the farthest left space, and then it shoots whatever arrow is in the row directly to the right of it. So you need to have that arrow there. And then there's like a modifier on the arrows where they get a bonus modifier for damage for each empty space to the right of them. So like then you can really increase your damage by having those empty spaces, but then you're building your bag in a way that doesn't hold things as well.
Yeah.
Or you're like having to give up on other items or whatever, right? So there's that real like risk reward element of the kind of roguelite of it all, right? Of like each
And
run.
is it like roguelike loot? Like, is it, similar to, like, a Diablo system where you're playing to get better stuff so you can go further in?
So it is kind of a bit like Cult of the Lamb in that way, where the big loop is kind of. So yeah, then that's what I was trying to get to with like the to elevator pitch it. It's the bag management of Resident Evil 2, a roguelite dungeon crawler, a turn-based RPG, and a town management game. And all of those things like really do work seamlessly together. Like everything I just described obviously is kind of the moment to moment gameplay of the dungeoneering.
Mhm.
When you get back to the town, all the stuff that you get in your run then becomes loot that you can use in like the missions for building out the town. So you can sell them for like gold or resources or whatever that you might need to like build buildings or whatever, right? Obviously. But then there are a bunch of like missions associated with the different buildings that you can get. So like for example, there was a character who I found on one of my runs, right? Who then comes back to my town, and he's an archer character, and he was the one that gave me the mission of like, I'm gonna give you this bow, and you're gonna do a special run where you're gonna have to complete this like side mission where it'll be like you need to get a certain amount of distance using the bow and arrow, and you can't do this and you can't do that. So they have like these kind of special like mission specific runs that you can do that'll have different rules or different modifiers. And then once I did that mission, I unlocked an archery like building for my town, right? And now part of that is in that building, there's a whole list of other items that I can research, quote unquote. That'll be like that'll have conditions that are based on items that you can find. So it'll be like, oh, I want to unlock this special bow. Well, to unlock that, I need to bring a legendary quality bow and like 50 research points, right? And I'll unlock that new bow. And then while I'm out exploring, that'll be a new kind of item that can then be generated. So rather than you like leveling up your character or like having a permanent gear build that's continually getting better, like in Diablo, you're building into the roguelite system. So like you're unlocking new items that'll roll when you play. So you'll have like a general higher quality of items the deeper you go, and you'll be able to, scale up with like the more difficult dungeons and go on longer runs and things like that.
See, that's the loop that gets me is tracking down those like legendary items that I know are going to make me ridiculously OP in certain levels, and then needing to kind of keep honing that in and leveling them up and finding new stuff. Like that's a loop that always has grabbed me. And I want to know what the other sides of it are like, right? Like, is the city building as in depth as you would like? I know that was a complaint a lot of people had with Cult of the Lamb, that it kind of didn't do either one of them enough. It wasn't deep enough for a lot of people. But I know you didn't necessarily agree with that, and it was one of your favorite games this year.
I did really like that game. I think that said, I I could understand someone feeling that way, even though that wasn't necessarily my takeaway. I think with this, the moment to moment gameplay of like what you're doing, of like the runs, I think is a lot deeper than Cult of the Lamb, because I do think that Cult of the Lamb had that kind of like it is like a lighter action game, right? Like it's not like the super deep, like very, very difficult type of gameplay you got out of Hades. It was something that was a little more casual, and it was more like trying to support the town building stuff, right? Whereas with this, something that I've really appreciated about the town building is that it has a lot of mechanics in common with the backpack stuff. Like one of the things that will influence like how your buildings perform and stuff like that is placement, right? Very similar to like the backpack placing mechanics where like the shop, for example, if you get like certain there's like these like decorative items you can get for your town, right? Where it's like you put like a box in front of the store or like a pot or whatever. And if you put two of those decorative commerce items or whatever, I forget what how they're described, that'll increase the efficiency of that building by like 5%, right? So like when you sell things there, you'll get more money back. Or like there's another building I had, want to say it was I want to say it's oh yeah, there's like a farm, right? And like every time you go into the dungeon, it generates food for your villagers, and if you put like farmland next to it, it generates more food, right? Or there's like certain businesses where it's like if you put this next to another residential building, it'll get this bonus. If you put it next to another uh, commerce or financial, whatever those are called, building, it'll increase by 10%. So like the city planning element of it is like more involved, and having that kind of um what's the word I'm looking for? Like crossover, I guess, between those like strategic elements of like placement is a big part of like success, right? It's not just, oh, I need more houses, right? So I'm going to just put them down randomly. It's like you want to build a neighborhood, you want to build a residential area and a commercial area and a farm area so that you can maximize the amount of land you have and get the best return. So I think and granted, I'm like early in it, right? I said I only played like 3 or 4 hours so far, so like I can't really speak to what it's going to be like 20 hours in when I have like all these buildings up and I'm trying to min max the map and like who knows? The map might get bigger. I might get other things that make resource management easier. But right now, I can already envision how organization and like layout of the town is going to be strategically important for me to get the best result going into my next run every time. And like that to me seems like it has that deeper element that I think people were missing from something like Cult of the Lamb, where like I can see the ability for you to min max it more, you know?
Yeah, with Cult of the Lamb, I found that like, yeah, the character customization was there, and I was just like, "I don't care about any of this." I just picked the default when they came back, and I dumped them in there, and I didn't really care about what they were doing or anything, like, there wasn't enough there for me to really
Yeah.
grab me. Sounds like Backpack Hero there probably is, and the moment-to-moment gameplay seems pretty solid.
I think it also has the benefit of being like Cult of the Lamb, I think part of its problem was that a lot of its marketing, like predicated, or at least this is my interpretation of it, right? I felt a lot of its marketing was predicated on its personality and its like its style. And then I think when you get to the actual game, you find that a lot of that is kind of just like a set dressing. Like there isn't really like you don't know your villagers at all. So there's no real like what's the risk reward of like using them as cattle, right? And like sacrificing them or doing this or that when it's like there's no real penalization or anything like that. Something that Backpack Hero I think has to hang its hat on is that the kind of through line of the story is there's actually a story, right? Like the main character that we saw in the trailer is this like young rat girl named Purse, and there's this like whole thing with these dungeons underneath her town and everything, and there's this like evil king that lives down there, and he like and his group basically destroyed the town that she grew up in and like kind of chased everybody off. So her and her father and like one or two other people are like the only people left, and she has this kind of like personal desire to rebuild the town, but also there's this kind of mystery going on about like her missing mother, and like she believes that she's still alive down there and that she was captured by this king. So there's like a whole mythology and everything going on as well. And it's like, it's not the deepest story in the world or anything, but like it's giving me beats to be invested in and like, oh, I want to get to the next thing and unravel the mystery and unlock more characters and see what else is down there. Whereas like I do think you hit a point with Cult of the Lamb where like, the story is kind of like, well, you're gonna beat all the bosses and then like get your revenge on the god that, and it's like, okay, cool, but like I don't necessarily feel like there's like the emotional investment there, like that skin in the game. I beat all the bosses because I wanted to beat the game and because it was fun, right? Whereas this I think has a bit more of that emotional core to it as well. So it's like I think it kind of has a little bit of everything, right? The novel elevator pitch of the backpack based gameplay and everything is unique from every other game in the genre. I think the town building stuff is deep enough that it'll speak to people that want something deeper. I think it's casual enough to not be intimidating to folks that maybe don't want a town sim game. And then there is this kind of like, interesting world with mystique and a personal stake for our hero. I think it's just really it's got a lot going for it. And I think it's a game that um I could see a lot of people finding the fun in if they find the time to jump into it this year, which I really think you should. If you're looking for a good indie game, if you're looking for, a bit of a palate cleanser after some of the big experiences you had this year, or if you just want like another good TV game, like we always say, it's sometimes like you just want something that is really like mechanically oriented, right? And that
Mhm.
has like that really strong gameplay loop. And it was perfect for that for me, right? Like during that 4 hours that I sunk into it, I was sitting next to my partner, she's watching, we got reruns of some sitcom or another on in the background, and I was just in it, and it was perfect for that. So yeah, this is a game I definitely plan on spending a lot more time with. And I don't know if it'll make it on my top 10 by the end of the year just because it's such a stacked year for me. But I have been really impressed with what I've seen so far, and I'm like very eager to get back to it again. I've definitely been thinking about it a lot since Saturday night, and I'm hoping I can jump back into it again this evening.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's good to hear. It's on my list. We got the code, and I was like really excited to play it. And I was like, oh, we got the code for PC. and if you listen to the Steam Deck podcast, my Steam Deck's gone. I'm waiting for my new one to arrive, so I couldn't play it. So I sent it over to Pete, and I'm glad you've had a good time with it.
Yeah, your loss was
Um,
really my gain.
it really was by the sounds of it. Yeah, I mean, I have had a good time playing American Arcadia up until now. I don't know if you picked up the game. I know you played the demo. Um,
Yeah, I played the demo during the Steam Next Fest. I haven't picked it up yet. I was actually gonna buy it this weekend, and then you gave me the code for Backpack Hero, and then I had Super Mario RPG obviously as well. So I was like, all
yeah,
right, maybe I'll hold off on American Arcadia
yeah.
for a couple weeks here while I catch up. But you said you were playing it, so I was like, oh great, perfect. Like I can pick his brain a little bit about it and chat. So you know, we both finished the demo and had a really really positive reaction to it. So what you said you're getting on with it well so far. How far in are you? How far past what we saw in the demo is that?
Oh,
Is my
okay.
next question too.
So the demo is different to the main game.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the demo is different. So you know when you go through those doors and you end up backstage straight away,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen in the main game.
What?
You go through to a different place and then, like, you end up going somewhere else, and then, like, you end up backstage, and there's, like, extended sequences before you end up getting to the roof and doing the bit with the crane. So there's, like, extra stuff in there,
Oh,
and they did it, I think, for story reasons.
yeah.
There's a lot more beforehand, a lot of preamble. So to kind of
Interesting.
fill people in, American Arcadia is this like 2.5D, like sort of like inside style game. It's from Out of the Blue Games, who made that game Call of the Sea. I don't know if you played that a few years ago, Pete.
I didn't.
Um,
I remember it, but I never got around to it.
yeah, it was like this well received first person like mystery game, similar
Yeah.
to this, but in a first person perspective. And you play as this guy called Trevor, and he lives in American Arcadia, which is the city that he is built within America, and everything's kind of great and fine and dandy for him
It's got this
until
like
it's a 1970s vibe. It's because they
yeah,
specifically call out look for someone who's dressed as like someone from the 1970s, even though it's set in 2023,
right.
because Trevor lives in a TV set is essentially the plot for The Truman Show. Except one day his friend Gus goes missing, and he finds out that Gus has been killed because this woman's on the kind of is helping him to escape. That's the goal. Is that she wants to help him escape. Um, and she basically works for the set. She works for the TV studio, and she is kind of I guess had a turn of conscience. There's a reason behind it, but I won't go into it because it's a story plot point. And she wants to help him get out. So there's this really interesting perspective where you both control her and what she can do by like looking through the CCTV and controlling things. So she can manipulate all of the devices in the world, like the lights, the crane. There's like doors that she can open that Trevor can't access. While you play as Trevor, who's kind of walking through and traversing the world in like a traditional platformer. And just the story is so well structured, so well set up. You have these kind of little flash forwards where you're being interviewed by someone who's trying to get you to recount this story and what exactly happened and how you got to this specific point, and you're kind of counting down the days. There's like this little prologue where you're kind of walking through like the 5 days up to that point. Trevor thinks he's the most popular person in American Arcadia. He's got that in his head that he is the most popular person in American Arcadia, and he's not. He's the least popular person in American Arcadia, which is why they want to get rid of him. They don't want him around anymore because no one's watching him. They want people that can bring in advertisers and
Right.
sponsors and get people to watch the TV show. So they want to cut him off, basically the same reason they cut Gus off. And so if you want to live, you've got to try and escape. And that's essentially the plot of the story. But it's been so fun, so many cool little puzzles to solve. The settings are just phenomenal, really, really gorgeous environments and scenery and art style.
Great
Uh,
voice performances too. Yuri Lowenthal, who most people know as the voice of Peter Parker in Insomniac Spider-Man games. He voices the main character, which is he does a really good job.
yeah, it's so good, genuinely such a cool concept and a cool idea for a game. And takes like that tradition, like that format that Inside and Limbo really kind of honed in on, and I think really just kind of runs with it. And I just love everything about it, and I cannot wait for my Steam Deck to arrive so I can continue playing this game. And I think I'm probably going to finish it in maybe one, maybe two more sittings because I
Nice.
almost got to the end of chapter two, which was
Is it
nice because
3
chapter two is
acts
like
or
I think it's I think it's three main chapters with a prologue and an epilogue.
okay.
I'm not sure on that though. But I'm really looking forward to digging into chapter two because it's a completely different environment, a completely different location to chapter
Oh,
one, which
interesting.
chapter one's like the office he works in at INAC. Chapter two, he's got out of the building and he's somewhere else. So I'm now trying to escape that new place to kind of get to the next place that I need
Cool.
to eventually, hopefully, get out of American Arcadia.
So what do you think the time on this like, how many hours in are you, and how much do you think is left?
I think I'm about maybe 2 hours in. Let me see how long to beat on American
I
Arcadia.
looked up how long
I
to beat, and it was blank the other day, so I was
Oh,
wondering if you
okay.
knew.
I would it says looks like it's 6.5 hours,
Okay.
7 hours if it's main and sides, but I don't really think there are any sides, so I don't know about that. But yeah, probably about 6.5 hours in total. I'd say about 2 hours in. So it is a decent length game, and it's the perfect thing that I needed at the moment. Just something cool, story driven, low stakes because as soon as you die, you're not thrown back too far. You get caught by the cops or whatever, and you just continue doing that little puzzle that you were doing to try and get through.
Nice. Yeah, I'm really excited to play this one. I really enjoyed what I, tried of it when we did, the Steam Next Fest, and I would really love to, get around to it sooner than later. Definitely one I think I'll probably end up hitting near the end of the year cleanup, but
Yeah, don't miss out on it because I think this one may end up on my game of the year list. I'm having such a good time with it, and
nice.
just like I think the concept for me really speaks to me because the Truman Show when I was a kid was one of my absolute favorite movies, and to have like a video game version of that, but with a twist, a different conspiracy that's going on, is just really cool.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Definitely excited to get my hands on it. So yeah, both games we highly recommend. Backpack Hero and American Arcadia. Make sure you pick them up. Both available on Steam. Backpack Hero, of course, now over on Nintendo Switch as well. Um, Definitely don't sleep on them. I know there's been a lot of big games this year, but make sure you're making time for the small ones too, because that's where the gems are. So, speaking of platformers, we're going to jump into a question from one Andrew Valentine in just a minute here and talk about some of our favorite non Nintendo platformers. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Pilkey, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go and show your support just like they did, if you want to keep the conversation rolling between episodes, or if you want to write in and let us know what you thought about today's show, guess what? You can do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to all the places we are all over the web. However, you choose to get involved or show your support, we greatly appreciate you tuning in to this week's episode of the Flipscreen Games podcast. Steve, we got a question.
Yes, we do. A very big question from Andrew Valentine.
A big question from Andrew Valentine. Andrew Valentine wrote into the question block over on the Discord, just like you can, and said, inspired by all the recent Mario Wonder chat on Nintendo Noise, what are some of your favorite 2D platformers on non-Nintendo systems? No Metroidvanias, no roguelikes, just straight up left to right, running and jumping.
Yeah, this is a tough one because they're not really my kind of genre usually. There's a few that are kind of standouts that seem obvious, right? Like the Celeste of the world, right? But they all have like a puzzly element to them. Same with Inside and American Arcadia that we just spoken about.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between like the puzzly elements of something like
Mhm.
Celeste versus, like, Inside, though. Like, I think those games I would call, like, puzzle platformers
Yeah,
more
they
in the
definitely are.
Like, I think of, like, hmm, like, something like the Donkey Kong versus Mario games, right, are like puzzle platformers in that way, where it's like the point of like, yes, you're platforming, but the point is to solve puzzles, right? I feel like the spirit of Andrew's question is like it's the jumping and running and jumping stuff. Like the stuff that is very much the successor to the Marios of the world.
Yeah,
Um,
there's only really 2, like, other traditional franchises I can think of that aren't Nintendo properties, Sonic and Mega Man, right? That
I mean,
aren't then in the other categories of it's a Metroidvania, it's a
for
some kind of puzzle
franchises,
platformer.
maybe, but we're talking about 2D, right? So like that does limit it, but like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think, um, you hit on, I think, both Sonic and Mega Man as like two of the big dogs, right? Like that's definitely true. Like they are 2D platform like icons in a way that I don't know that there are a ton. But in the modern era, I think there are like a lot of the early indie darlings, right? Were platformers, right? I mean, you brought up Celeste, slightly a later one, but like Shovel Knight, right?
Yeah.
And Super Meat Boy, right? Like those are or like even like stuff that's not as popular but like had its moment for sure, like stuff like Splunky and VVV and some of those games like, and granted some of those are a little more experimental, but like, you know, uh
Would something like Fez be discounted because of, like, the 3D element that's
I
in
would say
there?
that that's a 2D platformer. Like I think of Fez as a 2D platformer. That's another great answer for sure. Not one that I ever got super into. Like I'm definitely, of the short list. Like if I was gonna rattle off my top three, it would be Shovel Knight, Celeste, and Super Meat Boy for sure. Each of those are games that I adore, and like, Shovel Knight is one of my favorite games ever. Like I've beaten that game, I don't know, like 20 times now or something. Like I'll just beat it just for fun. When I went to Disney World a couple months ago or whatever, right? Like I just beat Shovel Knight again just because I
Mhm.
felt like it. Like I just wanted to play it on the plane, so I did. It's one of those games for me. It's one I'm always excited to go back to.
Yeah, see, I never got that with platformers really. What about stuff like Cuphead? Would that count, like, with the shooting element to it?
I don't think of Cuphead as being a platformer. I think like there are levels where there is platforming, right? But it's
But
like they
it's
added.
more the shooting that's the
Yeah, it's
element,
like
yeah.
what to me,
Yeah.
what that game is a boss rush game, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what its claim to fame is. And like I think you know that's great, but it's definitely like its own thing. Another one I actually didn't think about this, but it's coming to mind now as I'm rattling off more of the ones that I played as a kid. Is Rayman is another
Oh my
another big
god, I
one.
played so much Rayman on the GBA.
I love
Absolutely loved Rayman.
the original one. I want to say
PS1, right?
I think it was an I want to say it was an Atari Jaguar. Is that the right one?
It came to Jaguar, PlayStation, and Saturn in 1995.
Okay,
It was like a cross-platform
I
release.
thought it came to those first and then came to PlayStation, but I played it on PlayStation and it was the fucking jam. Right, like that was
Yeah,
one of
me
my
too.
favorite games.
But then
And
that same game got ported as, like, Rayman Advance to the GBA, and it was there I played
hell yeah,
so much time. Spent so much time with Rayman. I absolutely loved it so much.
I love that.
With his floating hands and feet with no arms or legs, just, like, floating away.
So, on the Mega Man side of things, there's also like the Mega Man X series. Obviously, there's also the Zero games. It's funny because I have such a weird history with Mega Man. I never like played them much as a kid. I had like a friend that was a big Mega Man person who got me into the Zero games on Game Boy Advance, and like those were like my first Mega Man games. And they're kind of like Mega Man X, but I've never played any of the Mega Man X games. And then when they did the Mega Man Legacy Collection on Switch, I picked that up and I played Mega Man 2 all the way through. And I started 3 and never finished it, but enjoyed that a lot. And like 2 became one of my favorite platformers of all time. I was like, holy shit, this game's incredible. So like I have such a like so there's like 3 Mega Man games I've played, but I think they all slap. So I definitely got to play some more of them. But yeah,
I
that's
never
definitely the one.
see, that was a franchise that's completely escaped me, that's, like, one of those holes in my video game history that I've just never played, but I probably would enjoy if I did, in the same way that I'm sure I'd enjoy Shovel Knight if I ever picked it up.
Oh, you
It's
really should. That
I
game is
know.
so goddamn good.
It's just finding the time for everything when there's, like, everything else out there right now, it's just insane.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's tough, right? You know, it's like keeping up with the stuff that came out this year is hard enough than when you're trying to play the retro stuff you've not played. It's like it gets a little bit
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And,
Um,
you know, and if you do open up Andrew's question to include stuff like Metroidvanias and roguelikes, then that just opens up to, like, a whole wide array of stuff that I've completely missed as well. Until, like, 2 years ago, I'd never really played a Metroidvania until that I not played a Metroidvania that I really clicked with until
yeah.
I'd played Metroid Dread. And since then, I've wanted to go back and play more, and I've wanted to go try Hollow Knight again. I've wanted to try Ori and all these other games that Max has suggested, and I just never found the time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, there are a couple on my list like that, like, one that I've always wanted to like, I've never played Rayman Legends, right? Like, I've always wanted to or Origins was the other one too, and, like, both of those are supposed to be really good, and I never got around to them. I would love, the time to get into, like, what is it? It's Yooka-Laylee, and I wanna say The Forgotten Lair was the second one, and that was the 2D platformer, like, everybody says that's phenomenal, and it's just, like, it didn't get a ton of attention because the first one kinda it came out and did okay, and it was kinda like, "Alright, like, it is what it is," right? I feel like people didn't really show up for the sequel. But it's a game that I've heard a lot of people whose opinions about 2D platformers that I respect, call out as, like, an all-timer.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Just the amount of stuff that's out there when you, like, really just look at a genre. Like, 2D platformer is just a genre in and of itself, and then you can add all these layers on top of it. Um, yeah, I kinda should spend more time playing these things.
I think you
What would
should.
you say your number 1 is? Is it
But,
Shovel
like,
Knight?
overall, my number 1
Yeah.
2D platformer
Is it
or my
Super Mario World, right?
Yeah, and it's like, with Super Mario World, it's, like, such a multifaceted thing where it's like, I genuinely think that that game is, like, perfect on, like a gameplay level. It's so tight, like, it feels right, you know? Um, but then there's the aesthetic and all that stuff. But then, like, there's such an X factor of nostalgia as well, right? Like, it is a game I've played hundreds of times. I've been playing it since I
Yeah.
was a kid. I
That's
have
my
a
Toy Story too.
Yeah, and it's like, I can recognize, its, like, greatness removed from my affection for it, but it's also hard for me to then compare it to other things and be, like, totally objective about it, right? So, I would say that is probably my number 1 with, like, an
Big
asterisk
old
for
asterisks on it, yeah.
I wouldn't call it a big old asterisk, but it's up there for sure, right? But Shovel Knight, I have that same level of affection for, but it's like there's so much less of a bias because it's like, I mean, yeah, like I fuck with that game. I fucked with that game for 10 years now, right? But like I got into it when it was new, right? And it was great then, and it's still great now, and it's still great every time I replay it. And there isn't a nostalgic element to it. As much, right? Like, I'm sure that there is on some level of, like, I like this old game, but there's lots of old games that I've played that I love that I boot up again and I don't finish, right? Whereas, like, I finish Shovel Knight almost every time I start it, right? And I beat it on New Game Plus, and, it's like, it's got the fucking sauce, man. That game is awesome. Stem to stern, you know? Um, it's like that is an all-timer in terms of modern, video games for sure. And I feel the same way about Celeste. Celeste is a fucking masterpiece, you know? Um, I think I like Shovel Knight more a little bit just because I think, like, I like the degree of variation that it offers, you know? It's like the boss stuff mixed. It's like it's got a lot of different influences that it wears on its sleeves, and it makes it such a rich package. Whereas Celeste is just so like high execution, high concept on like a really locked in idea of that like frame by frame, like puzzle solution stuff. It's just like, and I fuck with that so hard, but it is it's a game that I don't find myself going back to as much, right? And it's like it looms in my memory as like what a fucking experience, but also like it's so goddamn hard that like I'm not jumping in there just to, shake the tires off or kick the rust off and have fun with it, right?
Yeah. There's one other game that I've remembered that may not count, right? Because I'm not really playing it for the platforming element. I'm playing it for the building and the experimentation and the having fun. Little Big Planet. I used to love
Oh,
those games,
sure. Definitely.
and
Yeah, they're
and
platformers.
the platform element was fun, but it was really the creativity you could have with it and, like, building out your own levels and stuff that was really fun, and downloading other people's levels were really cool, and I miss that franchise. I know
It
we
is
get, like,
so
Sackboy's Adventure, but it's not the
yeah.
same.
It's really weird to me that they just weren't able to maintain the juice there. 'Cause there was, like, a point where Sackboy and that brand was so strong, like, I forget what it's called, but it comes up every once in a while. There's this, like, test that they do, where they, like, poll people around the world, and it's, like, for, like, identifiable, like, like, like Mickey Mouse, right, is, like, a
Oh, yeah,
figure
yeah.
that's identifiable all around the world. Mario is a figure that's identifiable, and, like, uh every once in a while, a character will kind of like emerge and like jump on that list and have this moment of widespread cultural relevance and recognizability and then kind of just like fall off. And like Sackboy was like that, it's like kind of similar to what happened with like Crash Bandicoot in the early days of PlayStation, where it's like, oh, like Sackboy was this big mascot and he's everywhere, and you can buy his plush at Hot Topic, and kids know who he is, and everybody's playing Little Big Planet. And then it's like it kind of just it lost its juice, it feels like, It just like I know 1 and 2 were a big deal, and then what was it? 3 was the first one on PS4, and that didn't seem like
And
it
they did the
connected as
reboot that was
much.
just it was just Little Big Planet was the reboot. They just, like, dropped the moniker. And then we had the one on the Vita, which was really cool because you could download the levels on the Vita.
Yeah.
Um, and it just, yeah, disappeared. And then they did the spin-off games. They had a few of those. Like they tried a couple of
Dreams
mobile
obviously was
games
kind
with
of
it.
like you know, a
Dreams,
spiritual
I think
successor.
that's probably what happened was the
Yeah.
core team behind it moved on. Um, but they could have found someone else to do it. Like, get Sumo to build a Little Big Planet, a full Little Big Planet. They built Sackboy's Big Adventure. You could easily get them to do another Little Big Planet and revive that franchise, and I think it would do well.
Mm,
But it feels like they've moved on from that character, and Astro's now like the new
yeah.
moniker, the new pinnacle, the new like front and
The
center.
face.
Yeah, but they've not done much with him either. It's been 3 years and we've not heard anything, and I thought for sure they'd have had another game in the pipeline, even if it was a VR title, that's where he was originally
Sure. I
from.
mean, I think that is what's coming. Like, my guess is that Team Asobi is working on a full length Astrobot, like Astro's Playroom style game is
Mhm.
what I mean to say. Because I would guess that they're probably not gonna do another full VR game. Maybe they'll have a VR element to their game, like a mode, right? And you could play it in VR and have it play
I'm
like
sure everyone that invested $500 in a PSVR 2 this year is very happy to hear that, Pete.
yeah, and I don't want them coming out of the woodwork to yell at me, but I don't see Sony supporting that thing too much longer or at all. So I'm sorry for you, who invested. But yeah, I mean, it's just like you put him on the PS5, right, with that demo, and it's like now everybody knows who he is, and like that game was so much fun. And a game like that, if it comes out and does well, is gonna sell, what, 10 plus times more than a VR game is going to, even if it is good and successful. It's like there's just not a huge install base there. And they're not gonna double down and keep promoting it, so the install base is not gonna get bigger, and it's just seems like that would be a waste of their resources, right? When they could make a,
The live
20
service game.
hour yeah, 20-hour game that just oh, I'm sorry, no, a live service game? No!
Yeah.
Took me a second there to process what just happened. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, no, no, wait, no, 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 don't do that. Monkey's paw."
I mean, but that is the, like, problem front and center with Sony at the moment. It's like, if it's not being distracted by VR, it's being distracted with live service, it's being distracted with weird accessories. It's like, they do not seem focused on what their
Weird
core business
accessories like
is.
the PlayStation Portal, which we reviewed, and
Yeah.
here's a card. We never use cards. Here's a card. Click on it. You can click on our review that we did of the PlayStation Portal.
But it's just like, they've gotta really look at what their business is and just be like, "Yeah, we make this kinda game. This is the caliber of game that we're known for, and we should just keep doing it."
Mhm.
I just don't get
That's what
it.
we think anyway, right? We got some heat for that commentary, but I think it's the truth.
Well, I
I
mean, it looks like the truth because, like, everyone seemingly is reporting that they're canceling these live service projects left, right, and
yeah,
center.
it's almost like you and I know what we're talking about, right?
It's like, oh,
Oh, well,
man, I just
uh,
it's crazy.
so yeah, with that in mind, though, right? It's like a 20-ish hour full length Astrobot game that's like, similar in scope to Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, man,
Would be perfect.
I think that
I'd
would
be
do
so
really well,
excited about that, yeah.
right?
I would actually be excited about them making a live service Little Big Planet and, like,
Yes.
investing the time and
Yeah.
money and, like, just keep adding levels to it,
Make it a
open it up to
platform.
the community, give it, like, its own thing. Bring over some of that tech that you used with Dreams and bring some of that cool stuff in, like, can I make my own models in the game and put them in? All of that stuff would be so cool. Add that to PC, and you've then got something that could kind of take on Roblox, and I think they could have done that with Dreams if they'd have brought that to PC, where you can
You
build
think
your own
I don't think they're gonna
platformers.
commit to something like that, though. That's the problem.
I
It's like
know, and it sucks.
Dreams is cool, but it's like they didn't do anything with it. It's just kinda like they're like, "Yeah, I don't know, it's out. Whatever." It's like I feel like for them to do something like that and really have it succeed, like, they really gotta buy in, and, like, Little Big Planet, I think is easier because it's less like, this is a game development tool that we're selling as a game, and it's like, this is a game that you can make levels in, which is like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's easier to wrap your head around, right? And, like, there is gonna be a certain amount of, like yeah, there's, like, $60 worth of, like, Media Molecule designed levels in this that are worth playing, and, it's like it's an easier selling point, I think, and I could see something like that being super successful if they do it right, but I don't know, man, it's like I guess I also wonder if maybe that is just like a trend that is better left towards PC, like because of how open stuff like Minecraft and Roblox and all that stuff is, that it's like, how do you possibly compete with that without, you know, opening up the floodgates to stuff like IP violation and like some of the stuff they ran into with Dreams, where it's like, oh, I made a Crash Bandicoot level in Dreams, banned. And we made a Mario level,
Yeah,
banned.
yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, dude. It's like I think you hit a point with some of that stuff where the more emphasis you put on you can make whatever you want, the less it is a thing that has an identity, right? Where it's like, if it is, this is Little Big Planet, it's back. It is a, tight, meaningful 20-hour 2D platformer, and it has a system where you can develop your own levels so that the content will never end. And you can just keep playing this game forever. And we're gonna put out packs that with new stuff and and
Yeah,
encourage
that's
you.
exactly what they need to do. That's how you make it a live service game. Like,
Yeah.
you wanna buy this new cool shit to put in your levels, then buy these packs and you can kinda build them out and people can
Or
play
like
them and,
I
like,
feel like Little Big Planet 3 was where they started being like, "Oh, like now you can make a kart racer now. You can make this now. You can," and like
well,
you can
it
do
got
it
its
that way
own
over
kart
time too,
racer.
right?
I didn't even realize there was a Little Big Planet karting. It was a game created by, Sony San Diego and United Front Games, and I had no idea this game even existed. They made a kart racer which was when Sackboy was at his peak, right? When
Yeah.
everyone knew him. It's like, "Oh, let's shove him in a kart racer, let's shove him in everything." But I think they could do what Minecraft did and they've really succeeded with attacking the like IP violations and building a marketplace and having all of that stuff on all of the platforms. And you make it so people can make their own levels and then they can sell their own levels and they can build like these custom experiences and custom games and do that, or you just do what Nintendo did with Mario Maker, and you just make it so they can create their own levels, upload them, see how many people downloaded it, riff on the levels if they want to, and re-upload them and tag them and explore and do cool creative things, which was what Little Big Planet was all about. And I'd love to see that resurrected.
So real quick, I was I'm gonna end it on this note. I was trying to Google the name of that recognizability scale because it's driving me crazy, and I just Googled Sackboy recognizable character scale, and the first people also ask question about Sackboy is Sackboy non-binary?
I
Like,
think so. I think so. I think he's
apparently yes.
canonically
Yeah,
non-binary.
yeah. He uses he him pronouns, but Media Molecule says they think of him as non-binary. So there you go.
Good. Good to know.
So yeah, hope that answers your question, Andrew Valentine. Shovel Knight is the best 2D platformer of all time. You heard it here first. Thank you, everybody. Steve tacitly endorses my opinion because he's drinking water. Anyway, that's going to
Mhm.
wrap it up for this week's episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast. Thank you guys for joining us here on another episode. If you want to write in and let us know what your favorite non Nintendo 2D platformers are or what you've been playing, guess what? There's a bunch of ways you could do that. Head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to our Discord, our email address, our Patreon, however you want to choose to get involved or show your support. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week, gamers.